Hey guys, this is my Markarth Magplar PvP build. So first of all, we'll get straight into the stat sheet. We have 33k Magicka, 24k health, almost 18k stamina. Recovery's on a bit of a low side, which I'll get into why that is in a bit. Still a decent amount of health recovery at 1k. Spell damage 2.8k and spell critical 13%. However, we're using Malakath's Band of Brutality, so spell critical is a bit irrelevant. Spell resistance 23k and physical resistance at 19k, so we're fairly tanky, with crit resistance coming in at 3k. So we'll get into the buff stats. So our spell damage is 3693, pretty respectable for a proc set build, with resistances in the rune at 32k spell resistance and 28k physical resistance. So getting straight into the gear sets, we are running on the front bar, Overwhelming Surge. What this set does, gives you 1k Magicka, 126 spell damage, 126 spell damage, and the proc is where a decent amount of our Magicka recovery comes in, as you get 15% of the shock damage done in an AoE radius back every second, and with Malakath this boosts this by 25%, so if you're outnumbered 1v4, 1v3, you're getting more Magicka recovery than you would if you stacked 1k Magicka recovery essentially. Right. We are dual wielding as well for the extra spell damage. Straight on to the next set. Falcon Scoria. Magplars don't use a lot of dots, however jabs counts as a dot, and we are using degeneration, so this procs pretty much every 5 seconds, and again it's boosted by Malakath, so the amount of damage it does is absolutely ridiculous. The one piece penetration also helps boost your proc damage and all your outgoing damage essentially. For our back bar set, we are using Crimson, and this is essentially for the 5 piece, because that again is boosted by Malakath, and even though it's a Magicka build and bleed damage isn't essentially boosted by our CP, in non-CP it's still quite powerful, and the heal you get from that is just a nice handy little 10k burst heal. Basically every 8 seconds switch to your off bar, your back bar, get the heal, switch back to your front bar. On our back bar we are running a Resto Staff, so when you do get that Crimson Twilight heal, you're also healing yourself with skills anyways. And finally, Malakath's Band of Brutality. This is optional. I have essentially run other mythics in this place, like Ring of the Pale Order is a good one if you're solo. But going over all the pieces, the enchants. So we have weapon damage enchant on our main hand. We have a magic steel enchant on our offhand. I think shock would have been a better choice, so I do need to get this changed at some point. On our Resto Staff, life steal. All the armor pieces have tri-stat. Stamina isn't so much important, but it's nice just to have the extra stamina to sprint, dodge roll, break free. Crimson chest, shoulders scoria. The waist is overwhelming. The reason the waist is overwhelming is because overwhelming is a light set, and the waist is the lowest armor value item, so you've got to have your to get your Undaunted passives for the extra health, Magicka and stamina, you have to have 1 light, 1 medium, and 5 heavy. And that gives you the highest armor value, the highest health, etc. Which is pretty much meta for PvP these days. The hands are medium. Oh, I forgot to mention this set. Braces of the Trainee. This is just for the little health boost, just to boost up the max stat. The 1 item piece is probably more powerful than most 1 item pieces in the game. I mean, most sets don't even offer a bonus for 1 item, and if you're running a mythic like Malakath, then it's just boost up your stats having at least 1 piece trainee. The legs are crimson, the feet are crimson, neck's overwhelming, ring overwhelming, and finally the mythic as 1 ring. Right, so next we'll get into the different traits. Nirnhaunt on your main hand sword. This is pretty much essential just for the extra damage. And then sharpened on the offhand. Nirnhaunt does not make much of a difference to your spell power on the offhand. It might give you 30 more spell power, which isn't really worth it. And penetration is pretty king these days in PvP. And on the back bar, I went for defending. This is because we're not really doing a lot of attacking on our back bar. We're mostly just healing, rebuffing, etc. So it's nice just to have something to soak up some damage. All armor pieces are impenetrable to give us that critical resistance. And then jewelry. So we've gone spell damage chant, all 3 jewelry pieces, and we've also gone infused to get that extra spell damage, because this isn't a very big spell damage build, and we are using a lot of procs, but it's nice just to have that extra bit of damage. Right, so next on the Mundus, we are the mage, and that's for the extra Magicka. With 36k Magicka, we are quite low on Magicka, so it's nice just to have that little boost. I find it's better to have the Magicka boost than the spell damage boost. However, penetration also works quite well. And for the food, we are using Bewitched Sugar Souls for the extra meta stat and the health recovery. The race, we are a Breton on this, which isn't actually the ideal race. If I was to say a better race, I would say High Elf. I mean, we do get Max Magicka, same as High Elves. We get spell resistance, but our spell resistance is already at cap, so I mean, it's not really physical resistance would be better. And the Magicka recovery, 100 Magicka recovery, is pretty pitiful. I mean, the High Elf passive that returns Magicka on class skills is actually more than this. And then reduce the cost of your Magicka abilities by 7%. This is great for sustain. High Elves don't have this, but what they do have is extra Magicka damage, and they also have, they take 5% less damage while channeling ability like Jabs or Radiant Oppression. So they're a little bit more tankier as well. But Breton is still, I'd say it's the second best choice. And then you could go Dark Elf possibly, if maybe at some point you want to respec Templar along the way. Right, so getting straight into the skills. On our front bar, we're running Puncturing Sweep. This is probably just one of the best abilities in the game. It's one of the main reasons why I play Magplar. I mean, there's not many abilities that do such a massive amount of damage, single target and AoE, snare your target and heal you 42% of the damage done. Solar Barrage, this is an AoE around you and it follows you. It does a decent amount of damage, it's boosted by Markarth, and it gives you Empower, increasing the damage of your light and heavy attacks by 40%, which is pretty overpowered to get that for the full 10 seconds. Not many classes have any access to Empower, let alone having Empower for a whole 10 seconds for the cost of 2.6k Magicka whilst doing an AoE attack. It's also an 8 meter radius, so that's quite handy. Light attacks actually do a decent amount of damage, because physical weapons like swords, etc., they now scale off of Magicka and spell power, so you can actually get a decent amount of damage even though you're not using a staff on your front bar. Toppling Charge, again, one of the greatest skills in the Templar toolkit. It's your gap closer, and it stuns, and it sets your enemy off balance. So if you are in CP, PvP like Cyrodiil, then you're getting that 10% exploit CP passive, which gives you 10% extra damage on off-balance targets. Degeneration, this is like our main single target doc, pretty much guaranteed to trigger Valken Scoria along with Jabs. This also gives you your major sorcery. Templars, they don't have no access to major sorcery, which is a bit of a bummer really, because in terms of buffs, this class doesn't have a massive amount of buffs. Purifying Light, this is more of a flex spot, so you could run something else if you wanted here. Like if you dropped Malakath and was running Ring of the Pale Order, you could have Inner Light here for the Magicka boost and the crit boost from the Mage's Guild. But this is kind of handy just if you can't finish a target in 6 seconds. The damage you're doing to them is going to be a burst damage, and you can get all the way up to 20k with it. And even after that, if you stick close to your enemy, constantly charging in melee range, which this is a melee Magicka build, so you are going to be in melee range quite a lot, you're getting that 2k heal every 2 seconds, and it also heals your teammates. That's quite handy. And for our ultimate, another overpowered Templar skill, 71 ultimate. for a massive AoE burst with an AoE dot. It's ridiculous. Right, onto the back bar. So we've got radiating regeneration, and I know a lot of people 1vx's in PvP will be like, why didn't you choose the other morph? Well, I tend to play in small scale group PvP, about 2, 3, sometimes 4 people. In BGs, for example, there's 4 people. And it's nice to be able to heal your allies as well as yourself. Also, I prefer having the longer tick time for 10 seconds rather than 5 seconds, because although the heals are slower, you can cast this before going to combat even if you're on your own, and you don't have to switch back to your back bar for another 10 seconds. You've just got a constant heal going. So you can kind of treat it as a buff going into combat. Combat Prayer. This is the reason why healers are still relevant in PvP, in group play. So you give Minor Berserk and Minor Resolve to your teammates, increasing their damage by 5% and their spell resistance by 3k for 8 seconds. This can make a difference in group play, and even solo. The burst heal is quite weak, but the area it does it in is the same as Wall of Elements, for example, so it's not too hard to aim, and it's pretty effective. Race Against Time. This is our snare removal, and pretty much every class in PvP needs some sort of snare removal, because as soon as you get snared, you're going to get burst down by 1, 2, 3 people, and you're not going to be able to get out of there. Like, sure, you'll be able to dodge roll, but you can't dodge roll forever, and this just breaks snares. Gives you major expedition for 4 seconds, that's enough time to get out there with sprint, and minor force, if you were to run Ring of the Pale Lord, then it boosts your crit a little bit, but we don't do any crits on this build using Malakath. Extended Ritual. There is the other morph that people use that does damage, however that got nerfed and it doesn't heal anymore. It also only purges 2 effects. This purges 5 effects. Easily the most powerful purge in the game. And the heal it gives is pretty decent. The radius is 12 meters, so you can just stand in this. It's a pretty big AoE. It's pretty visible as well. And the health you get from back, it isn't amazing, but it's decent enough to scale with all your other heals. Channeled Focus. This is a big part of your Magicka recovery, along with Overwhelming Surge. So this, Overwhelming Surge, and also we use Resto heavy attacks, because the amount of magic they give is tremendous. You can, in 2 heavy attacks for Resto staff, you've got 70% of your mana back, you're ready to re-engage. It gives you a decent amount of magic recovery without having to actually invest in any Magicka recovery. Also, standing in the rune gives you a little bit more physical and spell resistance. However, we're moving around a lot in PvP, so that's not too often that ever happens. For our ultimate, we are using Life Giver, and this is because it procs all 3 abilities: Regeneration, Blessing Protection, and Steadfast Ward. So you get a shield, a heal over time, another heal over time, Minor Berserk, Minor Resolve. So it basically gives you invincibility for 5 seconds to let you get out of any situation, or to charge in and take on 4 players if you want to. Right, since we are running heavy, the passives, we have all passives, and one I want to touch on especially is Constitution. You restore 108 magic and stamina when you take damage, so 541 is the current bonus, so this also gives you a lot more regen without having to invest in regen. And then Revitalize increases the Magicka or stamina your heavy attacks restore by 25%. And then if we go into the Restoration Staff, your fully charged heavy attacks restore 30% more Magicka. So from 1 heavy attack, we can get back most of our Magicka very easily. The food we are running, I've already covered the food. Right, so CP. I'm going to touch on the CP briefly, because this build, I tend to play more in Battlegrounds than I do in Cyrodiil. However, for those of you looking to play in Cyrodiil, this build is viable, so we'll go through the CP quickly. We have 20 points into Bless to increase your healing on yourself and your teammates. 60 points into Elemental Expert, 65 points into Spell Erosion, Penetration, and the increase in damage by Elemental Expert boost your proc sets. Mostly only Vulcan Scoria and Overwhelming Surge. It doesn't do anything for Crimson Twilight, unfortunately, but it still makes a difference. This gives you access to all 4 passives in this tree. the next tree we have, we only have 50 points into Master at Arms because we don't use a big deal amount of single target damage. I mean, Valkyrie counts as single target, and well, the first bit does, and Degeneration and Purifying Light. The rest of our skills are more damage over the time or AoE based. This gives us access to passives, only 2. Next, 75 points into Thaumaturge. Again, because we use a lot of damage over time, this does make a big difference. It also gives us access to passives, the main one being Exploiter. This is pretty much essential for Magplar, or even Stamplar really as well, because Toppling Charge gives us off balance, pretty much guaranteed, really easy to do. It's not like we have to spend a second casting Dizzy Swing. Next, we've got 45 into Ironclad, 25 into Spell Shield, and 30 into Critical Resist, giving us access to the following passives. Next, we've got 45 into Thick Skinned, 25 into Elemental Defender, and 25 into Hardy, giving us access to the passives. 10 in Expert Defender, 15 in Quick Recovery. Again, this helps with the healing because we're receiving more healing, so we're essentially getting 9% more healing, which in Battlegrounds, healing being nerfed by 60%, the 9% does help boost it up quite a bit. And 50 into Heavy Armor Focus. We invest more into physical resistance in our CP than spell resistance because we're already at the spell resistance cap. This gives us access to the following passives. 45 into Warlord, 29 into Sprinter, and 1 into Siphoner. Now you're probably thinking this is quite strange, but what this does is it puts an additional negative effect onto your opponent every time you hit them with a light attack. So like I said, most classes only have access to a small purge that maybe takes off 1 or 2 negative effects. So if you've got a whole bunch of dots and you've got this on your opponent, this could end up getting taken off of them, which doesn't cost you anything to put on them, and may preserve some of your dots in your opponent. And the following passives. We have 50 into Arcanist, 20 into Mooncarth, 50 into Healthy, and 45 into Tenacity. Quite a few points into Tenacity because, as I mentioned earlier, our heavy attacks and our Resto Staff is where we get most of our sustain from. Again, passives, not too important. And only 30 into Tumbling. We don't roll dodge a whole deal, but having a little bit more cost reduction in roll dodge is quite handy. Next, we'll get on to some gameplay with some commentary. Okay, so straight off the bat, radiating regeneration, keeping my team healed up as we go in for the first flag. Solar Barrage, get that power going, Purifying Light, heal my teammate. Toppling Charge straight into the jabs, burst him down real quick. Oh, another thing to mention, I'm actually using Grofdar in this video, since this was the first video I made for trialing the build, and originally I was using Grofdar, but Valkyrie is a much better bet. Also, I know Overwhelming Surge can be a bit of a pain to farm, especially since it's Tempest Island and you need weapons, and weapon drops in dungeons aren't always guaranteed. Another set I could recommend for the front bar would be Stuns for the extra penetration, because we are always, as you can see, proccing off balance every toppling charge. Straight into the light. We're holding this flag quite well. None of us died so far. So that's the beauty of having a healer in PvP. Usually your teammates will go down and then you follow straight after them. Team's still charging in. Did not block that meteor. Unlucky. Getting those resto heavies. The damage you get from a resto heavy with Empower isn't actually that bad either. Plus, it's undodgeable. There's flags going. Time to move on to the next one. Race against time. Get out of there. Snare removal. 3v1. The rogue's gone invisible. Burst down his friends. Luckily, a teammate came in to save the day. And they're dead. Another team coming in. Heal up my teammates. Swap bars. Straight into the offense. Dot up your enemies. See, in this build you don't always have to be in melee range, because you've got Purifying Light and Degeneration, so you can just chuck those dots on from a distance, wait till they come to you. You don't always have to use Toppling Charge, because you could put yourself in a bad situation sometimes. It's always good to keep up those resto heavies whenever you can, just to constantly try to keep your mana topped off. Nice roll dodge out of stun there, little Purifying Light. Goes down with the charge, nice and easy. Moving on to the next point. I was quite fortunate in this BG, I had a team that generally stuck together, so my heals were actually being utilised. It's always good to have healing numbers on as well, for yourself and for your teammates, so you can see what kind of healing you're doing. I don't have incoming damage numbers on, because I find too much numbers can clutter your screen. Okay, moving on to the next team. I don't want to engage, I don't want to get straight in there, because they seem quite tanky. They seem like they know what they're doing. So just going to engage from a distance, keep my heals up, keep my buffs up, keep my mana up. Wait till I see an opportunity to charge in. And see my teammate go in, so I'm going to go in as well. They're going down quite quickly, get the lights up on them. So there's a bit of AoE healing for my teammates. This guy goes down nice and easy. And straight on to the next flag. Put down Radiant Light, standing in my rune, get a little bit more resistance. That guy gets away, but falls into the lava. We've all done that at some point. And buffing up. We get quite a few players on us at this point. They just keep coming in, 2s, 3s. But me and this other guy, we seem to be bursting them down quite well. In with the jabs. Great thing about jabs, you don't have to be 100% accurate with your aiming, because it's got a fairly nice radius to it. Just keep those heals going, keep those buffs up. Don't even know what that green circle of my teammates is, but if I stand in it, it must be good. Alright, straight with the lights, one down, turn around, turn and burn, get the other guy down, and he's down. Am I going to get that third guy, or is he going to get away? Nope, I think I've got him. Where do these people just keep coming from? I actually get a lot of pressure now, drop quite low. Am I going to make it? Just about made it. Combat Prayer Burst Heal. It's not very powerful, but it can make a bit of difference, especially when most of the heals in this build are heal over time or AoE heals. So having one burst heal is quite handy. This guy goes down quite nice and easy. I think he was a healer too, I'm not too sure. He wasn't doing too much damage to me. Dodge roll out of there, gotta get out of there. Moving on to the next point. Or not. So you've got snared immediately there, straight into Race Against Time. I know I've got something on me, time to purge out of the way. Nice and easy. For all I know, it could have been Daedric Curse, which could have burst me down with 10k crit. 14 kills, 0 deaths, doing quite well on a first test run of the build. Just going to heal up, hold this point, no one seems to be engaging. Get some resto heavies, quite a few players there. I don't know if I want to charge in. Go for the other flag with my team are a lot easier. A lot about playing in PvP isn't all about having mad skill and charging into like 8 players and bursting them all down. You've got to play a little bit more strategically, tactfully, you know. If you see a point that's completely unprotected, go for that point. Don't go for the point with like 8 people. I don't know why a lot of people do that in Capture the Flag. Since this build's a healing build, we're not going for kills, essentially. Half the time we're healing, half the time we're capturing objectives, yet we've still got 14, 16 kills by this point. Back on with Purifying Light, Toppling Charge, off balance, ultimate finishes them off. Straight again, same routine. So mostly with your combo, you want to get Degeneration up if you haven't got Major Sorcery active already on another target. Purifying Light, Toppling Charge, into the jabs, and if you've got a sweep up, use a sweep, finish him off. Simple as that. The amount of burst damage you can get from a Templar, even though most of it is AoE, is still pretty respectable against single targets. These flags were spawning very convenient positions for us today. Make sure to keep your team healed up. Ready and regenerate. Got another healer in my group. Double dot heals. Straight on with the light. Into the charge. Into the jabs. Moving around the back of the opponent. Into the ultimate. Same deal with the second guy. See a teammate in trouble. Going to assist. Taking down that rogue. As soon as I see a Nightblade, turn and burn. With the AoE pressure you've got from Solar Barrage, you could take Nightblades out of stealth. Magplars are like the weakness of Nightblades. Split up from a bit from the team, going a bit solo since I've realised I've got a lot of kills and no deaths on this build, so starting to realise it's a lot more tankier than I took it for originally. Same combo again. Purifying Light, toppling charge, into the jabs, run out of mana. This mage is just spamming shields. I know he's going to run out of mana eventually. And this must be the point where he's just got no resources because he just lies there. No more shields for him. Got a whole team on me. This, getting mad pressure, running into another team. And there's another purple that I don't even know where my teammates are. I just have to get out of there. That could have been a very dangerous position. That Nightblade ain't going to let me go, so I've got to finish him off. And I hate Nightblades. Quite low on resources here. I'm going to get some heavy attacks off. Should have really blocked that stun or dodged it at least. Thank you, mage, for giving me your pet to a heavy attack resto off. Straight into the same combo. Didn't expect that Nightblade to come out, but just focusing my target. Moving on to this guy, I'm pretty sure he's a healer from earlier, so I kind of want to take him down before I take his friend down. Too many players for comfort. I want to get out of there. Resto heavy attacks. I notice the opponent behind me is using resto heavy attacks on me, so he's probably the same as me. He's out of mana. He probably doesn't want to engage. But he's running directly towards my team, so I kind of want to sandwich him and finish him off. Also, guys, this is my first build video with commentary, so apologies if I made a few mistakes or I was mumbling a bit. If you'd like to see more of this content, please subscribe to the channel, drop a like, and comment below on what kind of build you would like to see next. At the moment I have in the works Stamina Dragonite and Stamina Sorcerer. And I'll let you enjoy the rest of this clip in peace.